Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're joining us today for Project Perspectives. Sarah came up with this wonderful title. We're glad that you're joining us for the show. Say hello, Sarah.
Hi.
And I'm Carol. And with Project Perspectives, we are going to be talking about everything that is psychic, spiritual, and paranormal. And so, what I thought was really cool with the title that you came up with was the perspectives, because what's really interesting, and I'm going to kind of let Sarah share a little bit, is how we got together and why we come from different perspectives, but we're both consider ourselves psychics and mediums. We've done paranormal work, but we come at it from a very different perspective. So what's your thoughts on that?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I guess I just love the way that you come at things very logically, very scientifically, very grounded, whereas I feel like I'm kind of the opposite, to be honest. I'm more belief oriented and just woo. It's more woo. I'm more woo than you,
That's
Carol.
what I love. Yeah, you said you go, no, I'm woo. And it's like, no, you're woo woo. And I'm just the woo. I'm a half woo.
Okay. We do end up having these really great dynamic conversations about the paranormal and about psychic mediumship and all these things because it is coming from two different perspectives. You're coming, you always like to challenge me and say, well, how do you know that? Or where is, your information coming from? I feel like you've helped me a lot in my development that way just because of this kind of making me question, how I'm getting my information and where it's coming from. And I really appreciate that because it does keep me more grounded and yeah, just so that you're not, getting your information willy nilly and
Well,
yeah.
I think that's what makes us different, but also the same, because again, we do the same work and we both believe in the work and we're really passionate about it. But, for me, it was like, I'm always questioning, well, what about this and what about that? And I really enjoy the science. I've done a lot of coursework, a lot of study as far as parapsychology is concerned. So I'm always bringing that into the equation because I think that that's really important. But I do know that science kind of has its limitations, and I think that's where you've been really beneficial for me, where I'll be struggling and you'll say something and I'll go, well, gee, I don't know, and I think that was something that came up before we get to the show. And this is really about the listeners, because we're going to talk about fear of psi today, fear of psychic abilities. You'll hear me use the word psi a lot, but fear of psychic abilities and being a practitioner. So we're going to get to that. But I guess it's just important to say that we do have these different perspectives on things, but both of them are relevant because science has limitations, right? We don't have all the answers.
Right.
And so we do
Exactly.
have to trust the spiritual side and some of our personal experiences. And that's where you've been really beneficial for me in getting me, my skeptical self, to maybe be able to believe a little bit more. So anyway, like I said, I don't want to hammer too much project perspectives, but that's why we decided we
Right.
would get together, because ultimately it is about the listeners. I know that we're here to want to provide a service to them so that when they walk away from the show, we've given them two different perspectives to help them grow, to learn, and to pursue whatever it is that they're interested in when it comes to the psychic and the paranormal.
Absolutely. I think it's important to have that balance. Um, not just not just because we need some kind of scientific proof. We do, but also just because I think it helps deep seat that knowing that this is actually a thing. When you back it up with science, you're like, okay, it's not just woo woo. There is basis in fact, and that I think is what makes it um, just makes it better to have both of those sides come together so that it's not one way or the other. So, project perspectives. Here we go.
Yeah, yeah, nope, you're so right. You're so right. And it is cool. You're right. It's like, when I'm taking a class or a course or something and I learn something and I go, oh, that's so cool, right? Especially if I've gotten some channeled information and then all of a sudden science is over here talking about it. You've been talking about, law of attraction for years, and there's really all this science that's behind it now. I mean, not just
Yeah.
woo-woo science, but I mean, we understand now that thought creates reality, and this has a very provable, testable effect. So anyway, we're kind of tangenting, but prior to getting started today, we thought we had a topic, and then all of a sudden I kind of got the message that it was like, we need to talk about fear of psychic abilities today. So I think we can both relate in the sense that we've had some fears when it comes to development. So what were some key issues for you? For example, I'm going to lay one out there. I mean, it was fear of family and rejection and judgment. So
Yeah.
those were some pretty predominant fears, right?
Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, first off, I grew up in pretty religious household. So that in itself, it's kind of, there's a stigma around anything that's psychic information, because it means that you're generally just conversating with the devil. And so I think that
I
these
got
kind
you.
of
Yep.
deep, yeah, these like deep seated, just stigmas, just preconceived notions that, if I am seeking out anything spiritual, I have to be really careful. Well, we do, but it's more of like, it's strictly just the devil. There's no way you're talking to your dead family, or there's no way that you're talking to anyone on the other side. It's just the devil that's, presenting
Why
themselves
can't it be
as a love.
positive? Why does it have to be just one, right? It's like we always look at it at the negative. Yeah.
Right. And so I think because of that aspect, it has been extremely hard for me as a psychic person to say, I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, in front of my friends or my family. I mean, I literally just now been really owning it and being more comfortable in my skin and able to accept it. It's taken time. But I think it depends what your fear is, probably depends on maybe how you grew up. So, if you did grow up in like a really religious kind of household, you might have these really deep-seated fears that what you're doing is devil oriented. And I just don't think that that's true at all. The other thing is that for me, anyways, just speaking from my own experience, is that once you prove it to yourself that you're actually talking to dead people and you're actually doing this kind of work, or that you know things that you should not know
Right.
for any particular reason, when that happens, there's kind of this reality set that is like, whoa, that's crazy. I knew that. I shouldn't have known that. And that can be in itself scary for people, I think. So what about you?
No, that's really true. There's there's fear that happens prior to wanting to develop, right? So you've got these prior fears. I don't know if I want to embrace it, right? And some people, they can't help
Right.
it. They're very sensitive from a very young age. So they may be having all these experiences and they've got fear about having the experiences. Then there's people that have no experience. They want to have psychic abilities, but then they have fears about that. So I think it kind of depends on where you're at, because I know for you, you were sensitive from a really early age, whereas I didn't have any awareness until I was 44. I mean, to say anything psychic happened to me, no. I noticed some synchronicities. So I think it depends on your background as to where those fears come from. And then you're right. And so then you start having that awareness or that experience that you go, wow, that happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And the next thing you know, your point of view has kind of been shattered, right? It's like you've got a
Yeah.
reality check.
Yeah.
That reality.
Yeah. And it's a big one.
Yeah,
It's a
it
big
is.
one too. It's kind of, I don't know. I think it's shocking. I still am amazed at the information that I get all the time. I'm like, wow, I was right. you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I still get shocked. So
No, it's
I
true.
don't
And
know.
so even after you've kind of welcomed it, even if you've kind of invited it, you're still going to have fears. And that was something that I kind of wanted to point out today is that fears are evolutionary. There was a really interesting article, and I'm going to put some information in show notes for people to kind of go and have some resources and stuff like this. But and I'm going to look at my notes here real quick. Charles Tart, he was a psychologist, And he actually did some studies on fear of psi. He's a PhD, by the way, so Dr. Charles Tart. It's not just, here's one
Okay.
of those science things, but he really did a really great article. And he was actually interviewing people who were well known, solid psychic practitioners, whether they were mediums or psychics. And they talked about all the fears that they had. So these were even well developed. So I think that the
Yeah.
misnomer is people think, well, when I get rid of my fears, then I'll go and I'll practice, right? Or when I get rid of my fears, I'll do this. But fears are evolutionary. You're going to have a new fear tomorrow because this comes up. Your life view is going to be shattered again. Then you'll have another experience, and then you'll have a new fear. So if you run around in fear all the time, you're going to be prisoner of the fear. And that's true whether it's psychic abilities or anything else.
Yeah, no, that makes sense too, because even after this kind of evolution of fear, I got over the idea that I'm conversating with the devil now, and then I got over a few other things, just like the reality of the situation. Um, and then you're right, and then you move on to the next fear, which is probably for the more developed psychic, is like, am I going to be right? Am I going to be wrong? What if what if I am wrong, or what? I think
Mhm.
so. We kind of like, we learn how to evolve our fears into whatever stage of development we're in.
No,
you know
that's really true. And I thought that's why I thought it was kind of important to bring that up, because I think sometimes people think, well, when I conquer my fear, then I'll do this. And I'm like, if you're going to wait to sit around and conquer your fear, and this was a big one. I remember years ago, you were scared to reach out, and so was I, and to take that leap off that cliff and start doing readings, right? To actually start connecting with,
yeah,
because that's really putting yourself out there. So you could be getting all of this information and people are like, oh, well, I think I am. I think I am. And I say, you got to sit down with a sitter, right? You've got to sit down and use your abilities. Oh, well, I don't think I can go there. Well, then you're probably not going to hit that next level, because if you're not getting validation for your information, then that can kind of hold you back as far as developing is concerned. And I'm not saying we're all going to be psychic readers and we have to go out there, but that validation is really important. And yeah, we can get it from the newspaper or television or those little blips that we get. But if you're really connecting with other people, which is we inherently connect, you've got to get some kind of validation from that. So yes, the
yeah,
fears do evolve. Yeah, most definitely. But I'll put that article up. It's actually interesting, and you can get it. And that article was published in Subtle Energies magazine, which is a really cool journal. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. So for anybody that's into any energy medicine or some of that kind of stuff, there's some really cool articles, because I encourage people to read. That's
yes.
my side. But so
Read,
as
read,
far as
read.
fear is concerned, go ahead. No, were you going to say something? Yeah.
No, no,
Okay.
I think I was done.
The other thing that I thought I would bring up is, we often have conscious fears of, like you talked about, scared that we're talking to negative energies, perhaps, or how do we know that it's safe? And we don't understand it. And so we have these fear responses. But I think, too, there's a lot of unconscious fears that we have. And and that's true, again, in anything. You hear people say, well, you have a fear of success, you just don't know it, right? And does,
Right,
so we often have unconscious fears, things that are laying back in the background that keep us from moving forward as well. Um, and I guess what we want to do is, with this show, we wanted to leave people with tips and strategies for conquering the fear, because we can talk about them all day, and there's probably plenty of people out there going, oh no, I know what I'm scared of already. And I think that's the first step, is making a list of what your fears are. Sit down and write them out. I'm scared of, am I talking to something positive, right?
right.
Because if you have a list of them, because I want to give people like homework, I mean, that's me, right? Carol gives
Yeah,
homework.
yeah, yeah.
Assignments. But when you start listing those fears, you can tackle them one by one. If you don't, they just kind of circle in your brain, right? You just keep going over them over and over them again, and you're not really looking at any answers. You're just regurgitating your fear. So I think if you
Right,
sit down and make a list of, negative energies, family's going to reject me. Give me some here. What's coming up? for mine for you, you know. Um, is it really psychic, or am I deluding myself? You know, I mean, these are really good questions.
Yeah.
They're okay. You need to get through these, because if people say, I want to develop my psychic abilities, we know scientifically that fear inhibits psi, straight up, because you're telling yourself, you're telling your subconscious, you're training your subconscious through a fear that psychic information isn't good for you.
Very interesting.
So, if you're training your subconscious that getting psychic information is fear based, your subconscious is not going to allow psychic information to come through.
That makes sense.
It's going to inhibit your psychic ability. So, it's okay to have the fear, but if you want to grow, make the list, look at those and figure out how you're going to overcome whatever those were. You know, list your top 5 in the beginning. That would be what I would suggest. Um,
Yeah.
and then looking at kind of what's it going to take to overcome those, because that's really where the work is, right? I mean, that's why they
Right.
call psychic development a spiritual journey.
Yeah. No, I would say, like you're saying, make the list of the fears that you know are your fears. And then how can I face this fear and overcome it? So let's say, for example, um, well, I'm really scared of being wrong. I don't want to get knee deep into this
Oh,
reading
that's a
and
good one. Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah. That's a good one. Because me
yeah.
too, right? Me too. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then the next question is, so how can I sort of overcome this fear, right? And I think for that in particular, like we're talking about, is validation. The more validating information that you can pull from and get that,
Like the reinforcement, the
yes,
feedback. Yeah.
right, the reinforcement from the sitter that this is indeed something you shouldn't know, or how could you know that? I think that's a little stepping stone that you need to use to build upon the next reading. So that way, when the doubt starts to creep in, because even when you're right, it's like with compliments, people will be like, "Oh, you look really good today," and you're like, "Yeah, whatever," you know, like, or like I used to tell you all the time, I'm like, "You're such a great medium," and you're like, "Nah, I'm okay." it's like it's like no, like the validating information that you pull, that is important. And the more that you can build on that, that builds your confidence. And so then the next step is, well, okay, so I know I can do this. And that's partly what you're talking about, is like, if you have this fear in you that says, I can't do this, you're not going to be able to do it. And that's a self block, it's a self inhibitor.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so, at least for that particular part, as far as fearing being wrong, definitely validation is where to go, and practice. So those are the steps to take to get rid of that fear, is like validation, practice. So just kind of apply these things to anything that might be blocking you. So let's say it's about, oh, I'm really scared of discernment. How do I know who I'm talking to?
That's a great one. Yeah.
Again, I think that it comes from, well, discernment comes from knowing your own energy and what other energies are coming into play. So, I don't know, maybe you can speak more to that, but I just think that it's
But that's time and
practice
practice
makes,
too. You know, I mean, it's the same thing. It comes from
right,
time and practice as well. You know, I mean, it's like I
right.
remember.
And that's kind
Yeah.
of what I'm getting at, is like, it's just about facing it. It's like, how do I face this and get the validation that I need to continue on in confidence instead of fear, because
Right.
that's where we want to be.
And that's true. And that's why, you know, I'm always telling people, you know, practice with others and find a safe environment where you can do that. You know, it's like, oh, well, I can't tell my
Yeah.
family or my friends. There's communities everywhere that are out there, you know, where there are. And I think that's the other thing, is making people realize there are lots of resources. I mean, when I went through my psychic and spiritual opening, that was back in 2008. Yeah, we had the internet, but the resources that are available, they're there. You have to kind of find them, but or reach out to one of us, and we'll try to point you in the right direction. But so you're right,
Mhm.
that is true. But if I think the other thing too, once you get your list, and I would encourage people, put about 5 or 10, because most of us know what 5 or 10 fears are related to, if you're wanting to expand your abilities. And then kind of look at them and say, well, which one am I more scared of first? Because it might be, it might be a religious or family or cultural bias that's really more important, right? So if you're trying to tackle the fear of, okay, well, I need to worry about practicing with other people, your religious and cultural fears may be more of a priority. So the next thing I would say maybe is kind of start ranking your fears at that point, right? Because if you're worried about
Yeah.
what your friends and family are going to tell you, that might be the first place to start. So if you look at all of, if we write our fears down and we look at all of those fears and we go, oh, that's overwhelming, pick the one that feels the most. Which one is the one that gives you like anxiety, right? It's like, I'm kind of feeling this sense of anxiety. Get your breath going. You go,
Yeah.
oh, that's the one that really scares me the most. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I just heard, sorry, because it's like I feel like I'm being supported when I do this, right? When I talk, I feel like I'm
Yeah.
still connected and I get information. Is the next thing I want you to do is I want you to make a list of what's positive about using the abilities, because we want to deflect off the fact that everything is fear. We don't want to ignore the fears, but one of the benefits is what's the good that can come out of this? And I think people misunderstand psychic ability so much. They think, oh, it's really cool. It's just predicting the future and telling you when the love of my life is going to come and when the job is going to come. That is so, me. We're not even going to go there today, because, but
Good, good.
so, so for you personally, what's been some really positive things that have come out of the fears now that you've overcome them? What are some positives that you really are happy now that you're doing this?
Ooh. I think there's lots and lots of positives, but one thing I learned to do, because religion was really one of those fear factors for me, big time, was to really dig deep as to why those religions say those things, right? And kind of doing my own research. So again, this is like, how do you conquer your own fear? It might look different for everyone depending on what that is. So if it's for you, if it's for religious reasons or whatever, I would suggest you know really looking into the broad scope of religion and what it actually says. So I guess for me it was like I now have a more firm belief in, well, I won't say in like a specific religion, but I will say that it has really helped my spiritual sense grow
Mm-hmm.
so much stronger that I do feel closer to God or the
Mm-hmm.
universe or
Mm-hmm.
however you want to put that. And in doing so, that has built my relationship. So I don't feel like I'm doing something against God or the universe or whatever, so long as I am doing unto others as I would do unto myself. Um, you know, I would say that there were maybe some good reasons, though, as to why, religion would say to be careful, because I think that it does require a specific either skill set or knowledge or preparation type of thing. Like, I don't think that
But
it's a
everything
good
in life
idea for people.
does, right? I mean, everything in life does.
Right.
Like, you get better over time.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as the positive aspects, we'll just stick with that. I definitely feel that for me, having to face this fear of religion has now taken my spirituality to the next level, and I have even more faith than I did before. So that's great to me,
Mhm.
anyways. But it's not in the one religion. it's not in any one
Right. No,
religion. It's
right.
kind
Yeah,
of,
sure. No, I
for me,
agree with
it's,
you. It's for me it was a greater appreciation for the content that was in that was in, you know, all different kinds of sacred texts. I'm like you because there's truth woven in everything, and so I think you're right that that's been a positive, is that it has really expanded my spirituality. And I think people feel like, oh, I have to believe something to be psychic. No, 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 no. This isn't about believing anything. An atheist can still be psychic. Now, will an atheist
right,
maybe develop mediumship and connect with consciousness? That may be more of a challenge for somebody that's an atheist, but we need to understand that being psychic is a very scientific process. It's everybody has it. And so, what you do with it is up to you. But you're right. Doing mediumship work and connecting with consciousness that's not here, right? Um,
right.
that does give you a greater appreciation of spirituality. And because I was like you, at odds with my religion growing up as well, and I actually just really rejected it in my mid years, because it was all hellfire and brimstone. I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want anything to do with it
Yeah.
anymore. And this really, interestingly enough, people say, "Oh, well, it'll take you away," and I'm like, it brought me back. It brought me back to
Right.
spirituality. It brought me back to a relationship. And so it had the very opposite effect. So I think it's important, you're right, for people to look at the positive and say, you don't have to lose your religion or your faith or your belief to do these things. You may need to find some extra answers or have some extra awareness, but I think that can happen. But fear of judgment is a big one. We talked about that already, because how is our family and friend?
Yeah.
Are we going to be rejected? Are we going to lose people? You know,
Well, when it comes to people,
yeah,
um, I would just say,
that can happen in anything. You could all of a sudden turn into a star athlete and start making a bunch of money and being famous, and people start rejecting you and abandoning you and leaving you. So,
yeah.
um,
So you kind of, when it comes to people and what they think, like, just don't even. I don't,
yeah,
and
but it's
it takes
hard.
some,
Yeah, it's hard.
it does. I was gonna say, it takes, some self work to really dig down and be like, I truly don't care what people think about me. You can say that all day long,
Right.
and we still care. We still care. Well,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's right.
I
That's
didn't put makeup on for nothing. I care, right?
right. No, we're
I'm just
hardwired to
saying, like,
care. Right. We're hardwired to care. It's a biological thing. Well, and especially if it's a spouse though, too, because I know I was concerned about that when things first started happening to me. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm married to the love of my life. He's going to think I'm crazy. He's not going to want anything to do with me. And I have run into lots of people where that happened. And wasn't that true for you as well?
yeah, in the beginning, it was definitely hard for my husband to accept. He was like, I don't know. He wasn't like outright, you can't do that, or you're talking to the devil or something, but it did cause some issues. And I think that as time has gone on, and even my guides were like, just little by little, it should get better,
It's an evolution, right? It's an evolution. Yeah, yeah.
because honestly, I feel like he had to uh, really take a look at his own fears
That's
as to
exactly
be,
what it does. You are so right. You hit
yeah,
the nail on the head. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes, yes. Because it
yeah,
challenges, it's not really about you. It's really about what they're afraid of, right? And so
yeah,
you're allowing yourself to be held back. If this is something that you want or anything that you want, you're allowing yourself to be held back by the fact that someone else has fears that they may reflect yours, or they may be completely their own. Because for me, when all of this happened, it was
exactly,
like, ooh, I'm all in. This is the coolest stuff ever, right? not that
yeah,
not that I didn't have fears, but it was like I wanted to know more. It was like, this is crazy. It was like nothing I'd ever wanted. But that didn't mean that I didn't have fear of losing people or fear of judgment. So anyway, we were talking about positives because I want people to continue to make a list of what are the benefits. And I think you will find that if you list some of the benefits, you'll probably find some more fears coming up, because we were talking about people thinking that psychic abilities are really about telling the future or doing this or doing that. And it's so much more than that, right? It's so much more than that. I mean, I just love
yeah,
being able to sit with people and what's coming up for them emotionally, what's coming up for them as far as, sometimes I'll get nutritional stuff, gee, you're eating this and it's really not agreeing with you, and they'll try something. And I was in a session with a gal and I heard a specific strain of probiotic and I suggested it. You're not hurting anybody by telling them to take a probiotic. She wrote me like 3 days later and she goes, oh my gosh, I found this probiotic, I've been taking it. She goes, you have no idea how much better I feel. So
Oh,
it has real world practical applications. It's not just about, am I going to win the lottery? When's the love of my life? And I understand that these are really important questions for people. I'm not belittling that, but I'm talking about real healing aspects, real benefits. And I can kind of
well,
hear some
actually,
people
that's a good
going,
point. Let's
yeah,
bring up the love of the life. So, why is it that that's a question so often, where we have people that are like, can you please, tell me when am I going to find my soulmate? And it's because deep down, this is like the crux of their pain. It's like
no,
they
you're
don't
right. No, no, no,
understand.
you're right. You're right. I got to honor Sarah's perspective. You're so right because it does matter. It's really, really important to them. Yes, you're right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right. And so I think in that situation, we find it tedious because it's like we become broken records sometimes when we are regurgitating the spiritual information that is self-help, right? Because self-help is a lot of the information that we get, or at least for me,
Absolutely.
I will speak for myself,
Yep. No, 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 no. You're right.
um,
That's what it's about. Right. Yeah.
yeah. And so it's like when we're trying to attract that person, you have to have your own cup of love filled up first. And so I think that's why people, they don't have that yet. And so instead of looking to themselves and looking within for the answers as to maybe why they're still finding or needing to find their soulmate, they're looking for it in an outside source. So I just need someone to be here to fill up my cup because I'm sad and I'm lonely and I just want someone there. Well, that's great, and you could find that person, but how long is it going to last if you're still deep down miserable and you haven't really addressed the situation as to why you are lonely to begin with,
No,
or
you're so
or
right
whatever
on. Yeah, yeah,
problems it
yeah.
is.
I concur. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't even remember how that started.
Well, no, I mean, you're bringing up a good point, and we've talked about this before, and I'm sure it's going to come up again. And I don't want to get too far off of fears and looking at the positivities because you're right. It is really important. Like having love is a huge human thing. We want abundance. We want love. We want health. We want
Yeah.
success. We all want those things. You're very right. And so I'm not. So thanks for bringing me back. That's why we called this Project Perspectives, because it is important. It is important, and I guess I shouldn't undermine it so much. But I do have caution with it, and we've discussed this as well, where if you're being the psychic, right, and you're reading that sitter, you're connecting with that sitter, it's really important to make sure that we're not reading their desires and then reflecting them back to them. So, for example, I remember this gal, she was just so desperate to have someone in her life. She'd been lonely for a really long time. She was a very successful woman. And I think that was difficult for a lot of men because she was well off. And so she invited me to her home. And anyway, I connected and I told her all this information. It was, oh, that's exactly the man I'm looking for. And I realized I was getting all of this information from her. This wasn't coming from her future, right? This was coming from her desire, her intention. And I think, and
Right.
this is kind of something we'll probably talk about in another show, but where's that information coming from? If I tell you the perfect man for you, and then all of a sudden you think that person is coming because I'm telling that to you psychically, where's the information coming from? That's really important. Sadly, this woman passed several years later and she had never met anyone. And so, it was, there's an ethical issue when we're telling somebody about their future, about this or that. Where's the information coming from, and what can I best do for you to serve you to have that in your life? And I think that's what you were pointing out, though. I would more be inclined to, if someone wants that information, and I know we're tangenting, so sorry to the listeners, but it's like it's kind of relevant, but we'll get back to the positives and the negatives. It comes up for a reason, right?
Right.
Is what is it that I can share with you that will help you find the love of your life, right? What is it that's holding you back? And that's why I always, in my sessions, I try to kind of tailor it, not to tell you what your future is, but here's what's holding you back from having that. Here's what I see that's preventing you from that, because then it's more of like,
Right. And
yeah,
because then they can take that information and then they can apply it, and then that is the benefit of the psychic information, because
yes,
it's like,
yes, yes, yes. And so
you
it
know,
does, it kind of puts the responsibility back on the person. And so people go, well, that's kind of lame. And I'm like, well, no, it really isn't. Because if I told you the love of your life was going to be there a year from now and you sat in your house for the rest of your life waiting for that 1 year to come and it didn't happen, you didn't participate in making it happen. Or I could tell you, there's a divorce that's going to come in 6 months. I would never say that. This is like a really extreme hypothetical situation, right? It's like, here's a negative event
right, right,
that happens 6 months in the future. And then all of a sudden it happens because you believed it was going to happen. That's why that's not ethical. So anyway, we're kind of getting off, but you're right in the sense that I don't want to belittle the fact that it's important, that the love is important. And that's why I love that you bring me back to
right.
reality too. Yeah.
And just so that by doing that, so like when I say to someone, whatever the advice that was, that is, as long as they're taking that into consideration, and usually, or like you said, don't sit, in your house for the next year and do nothing. Actually take that advice and apply it into your life,
Mm-hmm.
and see if you don't have some kind of change. And that is the benefit. There's been, I mean, I don't like future stuff as much either. You and I, we know we don't like future stuff. But what if, somebody asks the question, what's going to happen in my future? Am I going to get this job? Just for an example.
Right.
And I say, I kind of don't. I don't think you're going to get it. That's it. And then they're like, well, I don't like what she said. I'm going to go out and get that job anyways,
Or they buy
Was it
into it,
me?
which is even worse.
Right?
Yes.
Which is true. But then it's like, well, that's true. Well, I was going to say, like, what if they, uh, just made it more of a determination because I told them. And this is why free will is that deciding factor. So I can tell you, what the energies say are the upcoming probabilities or possibilities. But in the end, the free will is really what matters. And that's it, because, it is. You have to make a choice. Everybody has a choice. You can take the information that we give you and you can apply that into your life, or you can take that information and you can discard it also, you know?
But sometimes people
I don't
don't
know.
do that, especially if they have a misunderstanding of what psychic abilities are, because there's a lot of, and that's, I think part of what we're passionate about is the education and the awareness is that it's, people think that it's just about future telling. So that's why I was like, okay, there's a lot more benefits to that. We can help other people. It helps you in your own life. It helps you with your own work, whatever, I've run into people who are nurses and they're never going to hang up their hats and become a psychic, but they have said to me, I just know what my patients need. I know what they're feeling. I'm better connected with them. That's what it's about. It's about the connection and what you do with that connection. Maybe you're better connected with animals, or it's about information. That's all you're getting. You're getting information that supports you and the people around you. It's nothing to be scared about, although I understand those scares. So look at the benefits of it and how it can help you. What are some potentials? It's going to be different for everybody because I think we're all differently. If you love animals and you're like, oh, I would really love to be able to work with animals more, or to kind of get a feel for what's wrong with animals, or to work with animal health, then that's a positive plus for you. That wouldn't be on my list because I'm not interested in animals, but what are the benefits? Because if something doesn't have a positive result for you, all the fears in the world, you're not going to have the desire to overcome them.
Yeah.
There has to be something out there that you want for the ability. People, oh, well, I'm just curious, or I think it's really cool, or, here's a great one. People who want to connect with children that have passed. That's a desire. That is a benefit that's so strong. They don't care about their fears.
Yeah.
That just drives them,
It overrides,
Yep. I
right?
mean, you can look at Helping Parents Heal, Forever Family Foundation. Those are both two wonderful organizations that work with letting people know that children, that have been lost, that families are still together in the spiritual bond, so to speak. And,
Yeah.
parents come and they're desperate for those connections. So that's the point of a benefit, right? That's a really strong benefit that makes the fears. I don't care what other people think about me. I need to know.
Right. Connecting with loved ones, I think, is probably one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best, because not only are you offering these messages that needed to be said, you're helping the client, you're healing the client, as well as this spiritual person on the other side that has been sometimes desperately been trying to get these messages out. And
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and so when you kind of feel like you help two birds, one stone, in that sense, I think that's a huge benefit.
Yeah. And you don't have
Also,
to be
like you
a
were
medium though. I mean, to want to make a connection with loved ones. I mean, that's, yeah.
right. Well, I was just gonna say too, like you were saying, if you're already intuitive and you're intuitive and you don't want to put your psychic hat on and just be like, oh, I'm psychic Sarah, you know.
Right.
It's fine to just take that ability that you have and apply it into your everyday life. Like I think you were pretty much saying that, where maybe you're a nurse or maybe you're a vet or maybe you're a teacher. And so having this intuition and just knowing, it's going to help your everyday life. How can that not help? I wouldn't understand how that wouldn't help your situation.
Right.
So
It's just everyday guidance. It's really all it is. Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah,
so true. So I think it's important for people to have positive benefits though, I mean, because again, if you're focusing on the fear all the time, it's like, well, how am I going to conquer that? But also remember, so it was kind of good aha moment that I kind of got hit with there, is that remember that there needs to be a positive desire for it and stay focused on that as well. For me, it was just the pursuit of knowledge. I mean, my life had been changed so radically that it was like, I need to know, where's this coming from? How does it work? Because that's my personality. That's my mind. It's like, I wanted
yeah,
to explore everything. Certainly I wanted answers for myself about, is there life after death? And I can read all the books in the world, clearly, right? But that's not going to give me the personal experience. And I think that's another positive benefit that people need to remember. When you have your experience, when you, like Sarah was talking about earlier, right? When you have that aha moment that kind of changes your worldview, you're like, wow, okay, I don't care that that person said this isn't possible. I just had this experience.
yes,
It becomes yours and you own it. And so that's the okay. So yes, there's probably a lot of fears there, and we're talking about, we could talk about fears for hours and hours and hours, but I think the point is to kind of get people over what are your fears now. And if you're already practicing and you're having some fears, again, remember what some of those benefits are for you, that how you're going to be able to help others, what you're going to gain from that.
well, also real quick, I was just going to say, just acknowledging and knowing what your fears are is like a major first step.
It is. No, that's
I
very
mean,
true. Mm-hmm.
yeah, because you could easily eliminate half of that fear just by
Identifying
saying,
it.
oh, I recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I recognize it, anytime it creeps up, I can kind of consciously be like, nope, that's a fear. I don't want to deal with that. Just not my bag today.
So, you've got your fear list, you've got your benefit list, so it's kind of, this can be part of your little psychic intuitive journal, right? And you can look at those. And then the other thing then when you have a fear is kind of take a look at what steps can I do to conquer some of those? So let's take, for example, okay, I know I'm getting emotional hits from people, right? So I get around people and I pick up their emotions and so on and so forth. And so that scares me because I don't want to say to people, hey, I'm psychically getting this from you. But so what are some action steps that you can take? And I think if you look at a fear and you set up some action steps for yourself, you can look at that one little something that will help you conquer that fear. So maybe it's like, I go to work tomorrow, my coworker's feeling really, really sad, and I'm feeling it. And it's like, you can initiate a conversation with a coworker without saying, I'm psychic. Gosh, you feel like you're a little sad today. What's going on? Anything you want to talk about? If they start talking and they start sharing and it's validating what you're getting, you just got validation. You don't have to hang up your
Right.
hat and go psychic, unless you want to. And then you're doing it in that
Mhm.
environment. But if you're doing it that environment, generally you're doing it with someone that's safe. So I guess the point is what are some action steps to fear? Because if you don't have action, the fear is going to remain in charge, right? You want the desire for something more, which in this case might be helping your coworker. But then what's the action steps that I can take to overcome the fear that she might judge me if I'm tell her that I'm psychic? You don't have to tell her. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of the answer as you're talking, and I feel like knowledge is always the way you take away fear, because we tend to fear, like breaks down to what we don't know or what we don't understand usually. um
Knowledge and experience, but experience is knowledge, right? I mean, we've had that experience. It becomes our knowledge. Yeah.
right, so it's like, oh, this is scary because it's a new territory that I've never explored before. um so again, I would say, like, this acknowledgement first has got to be the first step. You have to identify what those fears are, um, and then really, like, delve into them, because there's no other way. you
No,
know.
you're right. There's no
Um,
other way. Yeah. And again, it's true for anything. So, I mean, honestly, you can take these steps and you could apply them to anything that's really if something that you want in life. I want to be a great artist, right? Great. Okay. What are your fears, right? What are the benefits of you being that great artist? So now let's go over here and let's look at, and the more benefits you can have, the better, right? Because when a fear is
yeah,
overwhelming you, let's go look at that benefit list. These are the things that I want, artistic creativity, feeling in flow, feeling in harmony, recognition, whatever that is on that benefits list. But then don't just let the fears go. I think you're right that identifying it is a key part of it. But I think having those steps too that say, oh, well, I'm going to do this today, right? I'll just put a piece of my artwork on my Facebook page. That's a step. You've shared yourself. You've
yes,
done something that's taken an action step, and you might be surprised. People might go, oh my gosh, I love your work. Not everybody's going to love your work,
yeah,
but some people will, and then you get that validation back. So I think that's the
right,
point is if people want to develop their abilities to embrace it wherever they're at, even if you're a full-blown practitioner, I still have to look at my fears today. What I'm afraid of today are different things. I'll be afraid of different things 2 3 years from now, but that
yeah,
they're
yeah.
still there. But what are the benefits? What am I getting out of it? I've already know my benefits list to the point that I'm always trying to push through my fears. It doesn't mean that it's easy, it's not. But then I go, well, how do I conquer that? What needs to change? And it might bring you back to your childhood, right? I remember when my
Yeah,
father said this and this and this to me. you know that's part of why psychic development becomes a personal journey, because you're afraid to or any success, right? You're afraid to become the artist because everyone told you that your art was silly when you were growing up. That's that
right,
background programming that kind of becomes unconscious that we have to overcome as well. So anyway, I don't know, do you
yeah,
think that helps? I mean, did that give people some steps as far as conquering fears are concerned?
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of anything else. Because like you were talking about before, it is kind of an individualistic thing. So those steps might look different. If it's just like
They will. They'll look really
acknowledgement, like,
different. Yeah.
yeah, because I think for me, for like when we're talking about fear of religion and stuff like that's going to take a little bit more time.
It
It
does.
takes a little bit more, like, it just time and just kind of processing these thoughts and almost like recalibrating what you believe in. That's a really scary thing for a lot of people, to abandon the belief system that they had previously in exchange for something completely new. So I think that's why I think the acknowledgement of the problem first is probably the best thing, and then go from there as to how to face that fear. And then again, knowledge is power. So is it experience that I need in the situation? Is it more knowledge and information that I need about the fear of the situation? You know, break it down as to why. You know, why exactly am I scared? And then you might be able to figure out what that remedy is. So, well, I'm
That's great
scared because,
suggestion. Yeah, yeah. No, those are great. Those are great. Those are great things as well, which is why it's like,
right,
do a journal and like, what's really, yeah, what's at the heart of some of those fears for you? Because most likely our fears are holding us back in every area of life, not just whether it's this development, it could be about anything else, because fears tend to be
yeah,
universal in that regard, but also individual. I just wanted to kind of not stop you, but just backtrack a little bit, because I don't think people need to abandon their faith when they do this. I mean, especially if you're,
right,
and I know you came from a Christian Muslim background. For me, it was Christian background, and that is a struggle. Obviously, so many people in this country are Christian. It's not to say that we don't have a variety of faiths, but you don't have to abandon your faith. You can ask
no,
questions,
you're
you can
right,
be
because
curious, and you can ask for more awareness and more insight. And I have. And oftentimes I'll go back and read a Bible passage now that I go, oh, I so understand what this means now. I get it from this very heartfelt space as
yes,
opposed to this very intellectual, cognitive place. And so that's why I just, when you said, you're right. I think we do shift, and I think that we are altered in our points of view, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to abandon.
you're right. You don't have to abandon completely your religion, because I never did. I mean, I still wholeheartedly believe in Jesus, but that is like a crux point. I don't have a domination. I still believe in Islam to a certain extent, but I don't have this dominate, or no, that's not the word I'm looking for. I don't have the I'm not in any group. I'm not, and it's not something I subscribe to. I find truth in all religions.
Right.
I haven't abandoned anything in particular as
Right.
far as
I just wanted to be sure to
that
point
goes.
that out, because I didn't want
I
people to
think,
think that they had to, so I have to stop being this or being that. And it's like, nah.
yeah, no, I think you're right, because it is super important to understand you do not have to abandon your belief system as far as Jesus is concerned in order to become psychic, or because the psychic ability itself is already built in. It's already in you, you know?
Right.
Um, to be quite honest, I want to say that, uh, the whole idea behind it was maybe poo-pooed in religion, because it is maybe sometimes it can be dangerous. Like, if you don't have discernment and you don't know what who you're talking to or whatever, maybe there was a reason why Jesus was like, you shouldn't do that, you know? But I think that it's because so many people go to psychics, mediums, fortune tellers. They're looking for something outside of themselves for some kind of answer. And
I
if you
think that's
don't,
the key part right there. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
right. And it's like, if you don't know who you're talking to, and they just give you this willy-nilly information, and then you take it and you're like, okay, I don't. That's why I think it's important for people to understand everybody has this ability. You can find these answers for yourself.
Right.
And yeah, that's it. So no, being psychic does not mean you have to throw away all of your religious beliefs. Does not mean that, you know, you're totally woo-woo, because a lot of this stuff is based in science. You know, we don't have all the answers, of course, but who does?
Right.
You know?
No, it's true. Yeah, yeah. It's a big topic, you know. I mean, but it is so relevant for so many people. You know, religion, spirituality. It's, you know, how does this all mesh? And it was a big question for me for a long period of time. You know, and I remember kind of feeling inspired to read some information on Saint Teresa, because she used to have visions. She used to get messages from God. She used to get all kinds of spiritual information. I have quite a few books by her back there. And then there is a lovely book called The Christian Mystics, which was written by Ursula King. She's actually a university professor from, it's either Scotland, or I can put that in the show notes as well. But anyway, she writes about all of the saints, and you will find how many of them actually had intuitive based experiences. They all took place within a religious context because that was their focus. But that's the point. You know, it's like they were
Right.
religious people first. They were spiritual people first. They were God focused first. Their intuition, their psychic abilities. I know people are going to, oh, don't call them psychic, but that's what they were, right? They're having clairvoyant
Right.
visions, but they're having clairvoyant
Absolutely.
visions that are relevant to their spirituality, to faith. There's nothing wrong with that any more than having a clear vision about an animal, or a clairvoyant vision about your sitter or the patient that you're helping. It's the same mechanism. It's simply being applied in different places in different ways. And we can't say, well, it's good over here as long as you're using it with religion and spirituality. We've sainted these people. But then the clairvoyant vision over here, where I'm helping someone with their animal or with an awareness of what they're going through in their life, why is it bad over here when it's the same process and it's good over here? So I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of
I
throw all
think,
that out there for people to think about.
yeah, no, that's a really good point. I'm actually really glad that you brought it up. One of the things that I heard when I was first opening up, and I was super scared of being psychic, as far as, am I going to be in good standings with God, or is that even something that I should consider? You know,
Absolutely.
I
I
was
get
not.
it. I've been there. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
So I was driving along, and I was like, you know, is it, you know, in my head, I'm like, is it really a bad thing to be psychic? Is this, you know, really evil? And if I shouldn't do it, then tell me now, you know?
Absolutely. That's right.
Um,
Right.
so I heard in my head, they, you know, Jesus say, grow closer to God first, then worry about being psychic. And I think that
That's
that has
outstanding
helped me.
advice. Yes. And I agree with you 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that, and I think the main reason, because I don't think everyone's going to run out and go grab their Bible now so that they can be psychic, but I think the main reason for that advice is simply because you need to understand what the vibration of love and unconditional love and goodness and all that is, this higher vibration of unconditional love. Like, you need to know what that feels like, and what that energy is like, so that you can have the discernment later on. Does that make sense?
No,
So when you
absolutely.
come
Yeah,
up,
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one
yeah,
aspect of it. I mean, you know, I mean, certainly you're right. I think that we should be divine focused first, or whatever word that works for you, you know, whether, because I don't want to
right,
judge it because it's so different for each person. But you know, psychics are fallible, right? Our opinions are coming from our interpretation of, you know, if I'm reading you, where's that information coming from? Is it coming from you? And I've got to interpret that, and I'm fallible, right? And so, or am I interpreting that from just information that's in your field, from your past, from your, you know, from, even though we've discussed future. So where that information comes from, ultimately, you could pray and ask for the answer, and it's going to come to you It's whether or not you've learned to listen to that. It's like you don't even need us. I mean, we all need each other. I'm not, because I think that I'm used by spirit all the time. You know, God, I feel that I'm being used to be a voice for people who aren't able to help themselves, just as other people are for me. So we're
Yeah.
all interconnected. But anyway, you know, I think we've kind of gotten off on a tangent a little bit, and that's what we do in our conversations. That's why we talk for hours on end. But I hope that they'll be
This is
beneficial,
normal.
because I know we've been chatting for a while, so we probably should wrap our first show up, but I've been super excited to have this conversation,
Yeah.
be here. And I think we've left some people with some tangible steps. I would be really curious to encourage people when we post the video to add some comments. What are your common fears? You know, what is it that you've been working to overcome? You know, share some of your thoughts. Maybe you have some strategies for how you overcame your fears. And I think that's the other thing that's important. When you identify your fear and you verbalize it, go find someone else that has had the same fear as you and then talk to them about it, because then they can tell you how they dealt with it. Because if you can't come up with any steps for how to deal with it, you know, and I know you and I have talked about this, and, you know, through our friendship over the years and our evolution, it's like, I'm scared of this. How do I get through it? You know, and it may be
Mhm.
something that you overcame and you were able to help me, or something that I overcame and I was able to help you. That's how we do
Yeah.
help each other. Find
Yeah.
your fear, find someone else that has the same fear but has gotten through it. And that may be Sarah, it might be me, it might be someone else. And say, how did you get through this? Where did you find your answers? You're still going to have to do the work, but maybe other people can be a resource for helping you to get through that. Because as much as you
Mhm.
want your psychic abilities to develop, if you're afraid of something, your mind will protect itself and shut down the connection. And that will happen straight up in a reading. For those of that, anybody that's listening that's a practitioner, ever done a reading and the sitter goes, no, no, no. And the first thing that happens in your brain is, uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. And everything tanks. Everything
Yep.
tanks because your brain goes into a panic mode. You're fearful now you're
Yeah.
afraid. I'm wrong. I'm afraid. I'm wrong.
Yep.
That immediately stops the signal from happening. So, but you know, I don't want to discourage people and tell people that you have to get rid of your fear to be psychic, but it's to be aware of them and how they can hold you back, and then allowing that other space. So anyway, I've rambled about that. I hope that's beneficial. Any closing remarks from you before we go?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess just to kind of recap what you said, it's so important because the fear is really, it holds us back in everything. So I think this was a good topic. I think that we're going to be talking more about it because it kind of integrates into all these different subjects that we'll be talking about anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's a good first step because especially if you are, you know, finding yourself scared about your psychic abilities, um, you know, that's very typical. It's very typical. Like even for us seasoned, you know,
Doesn't
psychic
go away.
mediums or
That's
whatever,
right. It doesn't go away.
we still have our own fears to deal with. So I think it's a good topic to address. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to hear feedback from people if they have
Absolutely.
questions
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever.
Because somebody might have a fear that it's like, wow, you know, this is a great fear. And we could just do an episode just on, you know, maybe highlight a couple of four fears or something like that and talk about some of those. And, you know, they may resonate with certain people and not with others. But yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah,
agree.
definitely.
Well, I want to tell everybody thanks so much for listening and for being here today.
Yeah,
We
this was
plan
fun.
on doing more of these. We want to be here to be helpful to others. And so, yeah, please leave comments in the show notes. I will have some links to some of the things that I had talked about today, as well as how you can get a hold of Sarah and her website, as well as my website and how you can get a hold of me. And other than that, I'm just so happy that they're here to be here. Anything else before we say goodbye?
I don't think so, but this was a lot of fun.
It
So
was. It was. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll get better. It's our first one.
I know.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for joining us on Project Perspectives, and we will see you next
Yay.
time. Bye.